Hello and welcome to the Run Testers. My name's Nick, and in this video I'm going to be talking about my first run in the Asics Metaspeed Ray and Asics Metaspeed Sky Tokyo. So Asics launched its new Metaspeed range of carbon plate running shoes here in Tokyo yesterday, and I was able to get out for a short run in the Metaspeed Ray and Metaspeed Sky Tokyo this morning. We're not getting the shoes right now to do our full review testing, that will come a bit later, but I was able to go out and do about 5k in each of them at a steady pace. So I'm going to talk about how they feel and the differences between them. The Metaspeed Ray is the new pinnacle racing shoe within the Metaspeed lineup, whereas the Sky Tokyo is a successor to the Sky Paris. And Asics has also launched the Metaspeed Edge Tokyo, sticking to its approach of having two different carbon plate running shoes in its lineup to suit different running styles. Comes to the price of the two shoes. The Metaspeed Ray is £265 or $300, making it a little bit more expensive than the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo and Edge Tokyo, which are £240 or $270. And then in terms of availability, the Metaspeed Ray will be available from the 12th of August, and the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo and Edge Tokyo will be available from July 25th. The Metaspeed Ray is the lightest racing shoe Asics has ever made, well, full carbon plate racing shoe anyway. It's just 129 grams or 4.5 ounces in a US men's size 9. Metaspeed Sky Tokyo and Edge Tokyo are also very lightweight. They're 170 grams or 6 ounces in a US men's size 9 as well, a little bit lighter than the Metaspeed Sky Paris and Edge Paris. You've got the same drop and stack height across the three shoes. It's 39.5mm at the heel, 34.5 at the forefoot for a 5mm drop. When it comes to the design of the Metaspeed Ray, as I mentioned, it's the lightest racing shoe Asics has made, one of the lightest on the market at large, and that's been achieved by looking at every element of the shoe and making it as lightweight as possible. So on the Metaspeed Ray, you've got a matrix upper, which is a very thin and breathable material, very minimal amounts of padding. It's even lighter than the motion wrap upper used on the Sky and Edge racing shoes. Then you've got a full FF Leap midsole. This is the new foam that Asics has introduced with the Metaspeed Ray and Metaspeed Sky Tokyo and Edge Tokyo. It is their lightest, softest, springiest foam yet, and you've got a full midsole of that in the Metaspeed Ray, whereas with the Sky Tokyo and Edge Tokyo, it's used in conjunction with the FF Turbo Plus that was used on the Paris series of running shoes. So inside the Metaspeed Ray's midsole, you have a smaller carbon plate than you get on the Edge and Sky Tokyo. It's a teardrop design that mostly sits under the forefoot, and obviously that helps to reduce the weight as well. And you've got very minimal Asics grip, a rubber outsole, mostly focused around the forefoot of this shoe. Asics is suggesting this is more suited to forefoot strikers with the overall design. And then with the Sky Tokyo and indeed the Edge Tokyo, you've got a motion wrap 3.0 upper, a very nice lightweight material, a little bit more padding maybe at the back than you have on the Metaspeed Ray, but not very much at all. Then you've got an Asics grip outsole in a similar configuration to what you had with the previous models, with good forefoot coverage and then two strips of rubber at the back. And then you've got a dual density midsole with the Sky Tokyo and Edge Tokyo, which uses layers of the FF Leap foam and the FF Turbo Plus foam. And it's actually a big difference between the Sky and Edge Tokyo. So on the Sky Tokyo, which is the shoe I run in, the FF Turbo Plus, the denser foam that was used on the previous models, is used as the top layer of the midsole, and then the FF Leap is on the bottom, and with the Edge Tokyo that's reversed. And that's all to do with the different running styles they're suited to, and where I think the Edge Tokyo is designed maybe to suit heel strikers a little bit better, and there's a bit more stability by having the bigger chunk of the FF Turbo Plus underneath the back of the shoe and that kind of thing. But yeah, that is now a bigger difference that you had between the Sky and Edge with the Paris models, which are very similar all round. They also retain the different carbon plates. So with the Asics Metaspeed Sky Tokyo, you've got a plate that sits a bit higher in the foam under the forefoot, and you've got more of a scooped plate with the Edge Tokyo. Exciting updates all round, and Asics now has 3 carbon shoes in its lineup, all of which might appeal to different styles of runners or different preferences in how your shoes feel. And like I said, I was able to get out in a couple of the shoes this morning. When it comes to the fit of the two shoes, both of them are good in my normal running shoe size. I tested out a UK 9, US 10 for both of these shoes, which is what I've used for the Metaspeed Paris series, and indeed pretty much every Asics shoe. I'd say, as with the Metaspeed Paris shoes, the Sky Tokyo fits a little bit closer around the toes than something like a Nimbus or a Nova Blast in the same size from Asics. You've got quite a nice dialed in racing fit, but certainly enough room around the toes. The Metaspeed Ray has a slightly different fit, I'd say, to the Sky Tokyo. It's a little bit narrower around the midfoot. If you're someone with a wide foot, you might hang over the side of the shoe a little bit, especially on the inside of the shoe. And it also feels a little bit longer as well. It's got a slightly more torpedo-like fit. So there's a bit more room around the toes, I'd say. It's a slightly looser material in general, I would say, the upper on the Metaspeed Ray. But the fit was very secure and held my foot well when I was running fast in the shoe earlier. And yeah, the fit's really good on both shoes. I think they're pretty comfortable uppers, given that the main focus is just on making them as lightweight and breathable as possible. And that's been achieved whilst they're still comfortable and, you know, secure enough for fast running. So on to the run test. So like I say, I only had an hour of the shoes today, so it was trying to work out what's the best way to use both shoes in the space of an hour and get some cutaways of them as well. So it was all a bit tight, but I opted to do 5k in each basically at a pretty steady pace, like not flat out. This is my first real run actually since the London Marathon, so there's a nice local loop we're actually running on later for the Tokyo speed race that's going to be happening later. And I went out first in the Metaspeed Ray and just straight from the hotel did 5k. So the first couple of k probably a bit more of a warm up, and then got into my stride. Did it as a progression 5k probably from kind of around 3:55 to low 3:30s, and then I went back, changed into the Sky Tokyo, and did a pretty steady 5k around kind of 3:40 a k pace or so. Obviously, there's not going to be massively firm insights into either issue here. Not going to give any kind of verdict on how they perform or which one is better or anything like that. It's just going to be some things I noticed and how they feel and the differences in feel between them over the course of those two short runs. So first up was the Ray, and it is a soft shoe. It's a lot softer than the Sky Tokyo, and I think any racing shoe that Asics has made, like partly because I think the plate doesn't extend all the way back, and as someone who does land further back in the shoe, I'm hitting a lot of really cushy foam there. But in general, just the full FF Leap midsole foam is softer than what you had with past Asics shoes, which were a little bit denser, a little bit more responsive maybe, but you've got a really sinking, squishing, bouncy foam here that is a lot of fun to run in. But it probably leans a bit more towards the feeling of something like the Endorphin Elite 2, I'd say, than the previous Asics models, because you are getting so much squish. But then I think it is a bit more direct and forceful in how it rebounds directly forward than the Endorphin Elite 2. It is also really lightweight. Like, I mean, it's stating the obvious here, but it's a very lightweight shoe, and I did actually notice it was lighter than the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo on the foot, even though that's also a very light shoe, and the difference isn't huge. It all round just feels incredibly light and nimble, the Metaspeed Ray, partly because it is that little bit narrower, and you've got obviously a very lightweight design. The upper's very lightweight. It does feel, very sprightly indeed. So I was rolling through that 5k. Like, first I was started to get into it. It was an early start, and just started to feel better and better in the shoe. Really bouncing around very merrily, and yeah, really enjoyed it. It's just a really fun, bouncy shoe. And if you're someone who prefers that kind of soft, squishy side of super shoes, I think Asics necessarily always catered to that side that well. I think maybe now they will. I think it had a bit more of a feeling of even something like an Alpha Fly, that kind of thing, where you are getting that big bouncy feeling. I'd say for my own use, it might be a bit too soft for me, especially as I do land at the heel. Like Asics has said, this probably is directed more at forefoot strikers, and I think that's partly because you are just going to be hitting the plate then a bit more, and getting the combination of foam and plate for a slightly firmer feeling maybe, which might give you a bit more back straight away. But I really enjoyed running in it, but I would probably look at this more as something I would maybe use for shorter distances potentially. Obviously we'll do a lot more testing when we get the shoes for a longer spell. It felt very fast and very nimble, but I think I probably had to work a bit harder in it with my kind of shuffling style, as opposed to someone who's maybe a bit more loping and really engaging all of the bounce of the shoe rather than just scuttling along like I do. Then did the quick swap to the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo. I went out for 5k in that, and that had a much more familiar feel if you've been using Asics racing shoes in the past. Like the Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris is my favourite racing shoe of all time. I've run my last 2 marathon PBs in that shoe, and yeah, really love using it. And it's a similar feeling here with the Sky Tokyo. We'll obviously do some more comparisons to the older shoe when we've gone to some more testing, but really could feel the plate at the back, all the way at the back, and getting a firmer, more fluid transition. I think you're not getting such a bouncy feeling even with the new FF Leap midsole foam under the forefoot there, but it's not as bouncy as the Metaspeed Ray, but you are getting that really nice roll from heel to toe and a really nice punch off the forefoot I've always had with the Sky series, like more so than the Edge series. I found I just find that it really get a nice amount of lift off the toes, and it gives me maybe a bit more kind of air time when I'm running, even as someone who is like a high cadence, like I say, quite a shuffly runner. So yeah, really like the feeling of that. Like maybe there's a bit more kind of boom under the forefoot there with the introduction of the new foam, but yeah, very hard to tell that from a short run. But it really felt like I could lock in and maintain a pace very easily in the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo, as I've always been able to with the Sky Paris. It just felt turning over, felt good. I was working pretty hard for these 5Ks today, but I was able to get into a nice rhythm with the Sky Tokyo, whereas the Metaspeed Ray maybe felt a bit more kind of punchy and kind of sprightly. But yeah, I think if I was looking at locking in for a longer race in particular, the easier transition I found with the Sky Tokyo would probably suit me a bit better. But yeah, they do now have quite distinct feels, I'd say, within the Asics line. So it's almost maybe that the Metaspeed Ray, instead of entering in just as the de facto best racing shoe in their lineup, it's now another option. And Asics has always had these two different options to suit different styles or suit different preferences, really, between the Edge and the Sky. I think the Metaspeed Ray offers something different in offering a softer, more springy focused ride that maybe people didn't get so much from the Sky and Edge in the past. And now Asics has a shoe that does that in a way that lots of brands do as well. Things like I say, the Alpha Fly and the Endorphin Elite 2 that have these squishy, springy midsoles. Did also do a short side-by-side run in both shoes to check the fit and do a quick run back and forth. And you can, like I say, feel that springiness, that squishiness at the back of the Metaspeed Ray in particular, the kind of more rolling fast transition on the Sky Tokyo for me. But yeah, this is all very initial testing, and it was very fun testing. I say, I had a great time running in both shoes this morning. It was a real thrill to use them. Always excited when there's new super shoes, especially having loved the Metaspeed Sky Paris so much. And yeah, I'd say overall my early thoughts probably more that the Metaspeed Ray will offer a different option rather than one that will necessarily be the one that everyone will go for as the fastest shoe there. Like, it's the lightest, it's incredibly fast, but if you already have been loving the feel of the Sky Paris, it's a different feeling, and it might be something that people haven't had from Asics before. So yeah, it'd be really interesting to see how it's received, and we'll get a load more testing done. Hopefully the whole team will be able to get hold of them ahead of the launch dates and give you our full review thoughts. But yeah, fun to get out there for first impressions there this morning and yeah, look at the differences between the two shoes. That's our first look at the Asics Metaspeed Ray and Asics Metaspeed Sky Tokyo. Dive into the comments if you have any questions about the shoes, and we'll try and respond to them if we can. And like I say, come back later in the year for our full review of both when we've had a chance to really put them through their paces.